I'm RC. I'm from BuildOps. I run our content and webinar programming. For those folks who are not familiar with BuildOps, we are an all-in-one platform built for commercial contractors specifically. So we help folks manage everything from projects to service to operations and everything in between. You can check out buildops.com if you want to learn more about us. But we're talking about safety today. And what we're digging in with was actually working in the field when it comes to protecting your teams, not just on the job site, but also even, for example, on the drive home from the job site. So we got two really cool folks here who really, honestly, they've built their careers around this entire topic. We got Ricky Reams, and we got Rebecca Medaris here to share lessons from working the trades. So we'll do some intros first so you guys know who we're talking with. While we do these introductions, I'm going to pop up a poll question for you. You'll see a few of those, I think 3, throughout the webinar. If you can just answer those poll questions, it helps us kind of level set. It's a great way for you to engage with us as well. And then we can kind of adapt the conversation based on what your feedback is. So we'll kick it off first with Rebecca, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself. And again, you'll see the poll question in a second.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks. No, I'm Rebecca Medaris. I'm super happy to be here. This is really fun. I work at Pan Pacific Mechanical. We're a full mechanical contractor throughout California, in Hawaii, and right now we have a job in Colorado as well. So it's really, we're all over. We have about 1,000 guys out in the field, and we do a lot of work, especially in hospitals. Hospitals are probably our place to work. So.
Awesome. Ricky.
Yeah, my name is Ricky Reams. I'm the Vice President of Safety and Quality for Murphy Company, a mechanical contractor that works all across the country. Primarily, our headquarters is in St. Louis, Missouri. We have another large office in Denver, Colorado, that we work through Illinois, Missouri, Colorado, Wyoming, and in pretty much every industry, from brewing to hospitals, stadiums, anything you can think of, you build. We're a full mechanical contractor and work across all spectrums.
Awesome. I see some folks still adding into the poll, but I will say as the answers are populating in, that right now the biggest safety challenge is actually tool-related injuries or equipment hazards, which is interesting because we're going to be talking about that very specifically in a moment, and the conversations you could be having with vendors that I brand new information for me. I learned a lot from these folks when we did our prep calls for this. But yeah, 50% of you all said tool-related injuries or equipment hazards. 25% said culture and mindset. 25% said fall protection or fall-related injuries, which we will talk about as well. And interestingly, no one's saying addressing mental health and well-being. So I'd love to dig into that a little bit more when we talk about that. We will talk about that toward the end of the session as well. So I appreciate your input and feedback. I did want to, let me close that out. I want to pull up a stat here. So I did some research, and folks on the panel here as well helped me with this, but I did want to kind of like level set us about why we're having this conversation. Obviously, in a couple of weeks, there's also Construction Safety Week, which is relevant. And this is kind of why we tied this webinar into right now, because honestly, every week should be Construction Safety Week, but it's a great way to tie it in, right? So let me throw the stat up for you all. This is really interesting. I thought it was a couple of reasons why I thought it was interesting. Number one, so what you're seeing in the big circle here is 5,283 fatal work injuries across all industries. This was in 2023. And then the largest chunk by far of any industry is construction with 1,075. This was fatalities in 2023, all terrible. What I thought was really interesting, and I love your all's input on this one, is that this was the highest for construction industry since 2011. So think about better awareness, better equipment. Like, I feel like even in like the sports world, like everyone knows about injuries in sports. Like we all do things a little bit differently nowadays than we did, like, let's say 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I find it interesting that it is still not, the number doesn't really go down long-term. And so I love your input on why do you think this is still such a prevalent issue in this industry? Ricky, go ahead. Yeah.
From our perspective, we have always looked at this. I know we talked briefly about the HECA model, which is high energy control assessments.
Let me bring that up too. I'm going to bring that up too while you talk about that a little bit. Go ahead.
When we looked at that model, what we really looked at, the data you just showed, if we go back and look over the last 10 years, the last 20 years, the fatality rates in our industry have changed very, very little. They have really been flat for the last 10 to 20 years, meaning we lose right around 1,000 construction workers a year. And again, last year, that number was slightly up. Now, if we look on the other side of that and we look at all injuries, we look at first aids, we look at recordables, lost times, all of those things that we measure every day, all of those have come straight downhill. So as we looked at that, we did a really good job of addressing minor injuries, of addressing unsafe conditions, of doing those. And we really missed out. I always kind of go back and look at, the traditional high creek safety pyramid. If we go back and look at the model, I think the model in safety that we all learned years ago is that if we fix the bottom of the pyramid, if we fix the unsafe acts, if we fix the unsafe conditions, if we address first aids and we did that, at the bottom of the pyramid fix the top. And it really doesn't. When we look at a HEC model, we're looking at high energy control hazards, those things that actually create and can result in fatalities. What are the most dangerous things? What's the highest energy levels that are going to be associated with the work that we're doing today? And addressing those specifically, in a simple term, start with what can kill me, not with what can hurt me. So we see programs like the Energy Wheel, programs like Sticky, stuff that can kill me. We're really looking at, as we're starting a job, as we're looking at anything, we're assessing what are those high energy activities that we're going to see today, and then place a direct control measure on that high energy activity. So as we're doing a HECA evaluation, we're really going around, we're looking at a live job site, and we're trying to identify those high energy things that have SIF type potential to them, and then do they have a corresponding direct control with them? So it's really focusing at the top of that, focusing on the things that have the highest potential for injury.
What is this HECA? You talk about a HECA assessment, and either of you can chime in here. When is that done before a project, like multiple times throughout the project? What does that actually look like in action?
Well, there's multiple ways that the actual assessment is meant to be done on a job site. We really dove into this 4 or 5 years ago. The CSRA, the Construction Safety Research Alliance out of Boulder, Colorado, Dr. Matt Hollowell and his team have done some incredible work in this area and really designing a model that you can follow for this. But really, it's everything from the setup and design of a project, recognizing those high energy, high hazard activities that are going to take place and that we're planning appropriately for that. And then as we're assessing a job site, we're doing a HECA evaluation, an assessment on a job site. We're really looking for those direct controls in place in regard to those high hazard activities.
You hit the nail on the head. It's something that you're kind of constantly trying to stay focused on. You've got to do, and one of the key elements of Construction Safety Week this year is planning. So it's, as Ricky said, you've got to do it on the job site. You've got to do it in the area where the work is being done, and you have to be doing it consistently. It's at least once a day, if not more often, because the systems are changing all the time. The environment is changing all the time. So if you have another contractor working next to you who's doing something, that's going to affect you, they weren't working there that morning, they weren't working there yesterday, the weather changes, the job itself grows dramatically and goes through different phases. So really taking the time to plan out your work in the area where you're doing your work. And like Ricky says, focusing on some of those more dangerous activities and doing it on a consistent basis. The being aware of it too, the some of the complacency, you ask why our numbers haven't gone down. It's one of our things that we see all the time is that these guys have done it 1,000 times. There's only so many different ways to put pipe into a wall or put pipe into a ceiling, right? And they happen to unfortunately get complacent.
For sure.
So being able to stay focused and to refocus is really, really important.
I joke every time I'm a webinar and I moderate it, I joke that I'm the ignorant fool who asks the dumb questions, but it's true.
Yeah.
Because I'm also not in the industry, so I'm going to ask dumb questions. But so is there, by default, no matter the size of the team or whatever it may be that's going on in the project on the job site, is there for sure like the one singular person responsible for this like for example, HECA assessments or what have you, or like, is there clarity on that from the get-go, or does that need to be verbalized somehow, some way, right?
From a training perspective, it's, training and an observation perspective, it's everybody's responsibility. We want all employees to be properly trained to recognize what are the most serious hazards on a job site. We're doing a pre-task, and whether a company calls that a JSA or a hazard assessment or whatever they're doing at the time,
EJJ, yeah.
we're evaluating everything, every step of the process we're getting ready to do. And as we do that, we have to evaluate what is the most dangerous aspects of the work we're getting ready to do. What has the highest energy potential, and whether that's a lift, whether that's mobile equipment, whether that's a pneumatic test, whatever that is that poses that energy risk, then we address and make sure that everyone is aware and that the direct controls are in place to mitigate that hazard.
And everyone has a responsibility in safety. That's a big thing. The foreman maybe has the most experience, but maybe he's been out of the field for a little while. The journeyman's been doing it forever. Maybe he's gotten a little complacent. The first year apprentice is maybe brand new and he doesn't know any better, right? So you need everybody's perspective looking at it.
Can we shift gears a little bit? Because when we were having this prep call, you talked a little bit about portaband injuries, Rebecca,
Yeah.
and this is going to lead into a next thing, which talks about, first of all, the biggest challenge was about tool safety. So this is a great lead into that to address y'all's top of mind issue here. So talk to me a little bit, Rebecca, about how this recurring issue, portaband injuries, and how you identified that it was, and then obviously we'll lead into a little bit about how this got addressed, essentially, or fixed.
Yeah, perfect. No, we've been fighting with portaband injuries, it feels like forever. And one of our worst or most common portaband injuries is using the big 5.5-inch portaband, which weighs about 15 pounds, and cutting a little tiny overhead. And so what happens is they're holding it, or they cut and they come down right on them, and they cut their other hand. The problem with portabands is they're great tools. They're super versatile, and they can do like anything. And so we just, I think, naturally gravitate towards a portaband. What we have been really trying to do is educate our employees that there are multiple different sizes of portabands. The 5.5-inch ones, you've got to use two hands. You have to. We've got little 1 7/8, I think, that you can use single-handedly. And so, A, we've got to educate our guys to know that there's the different tools out there. B, we've got to buy those tools and get them out to the job site so that they're, convenient. That's the other thing, right? We're under huge time pressure, schedule pressure, right? So for me to stop what I'm doing, walk somewhere else, get the right tool, when I can just do this single cut and it'll probably be fine. I've done it 1,000 times before, right? And so that's where we find guys using the wrong size portaband instead of being aware of, knowing, and having available the right size portaband.
Oh man, that availability, like, so again, I'm not in the field, so this analogy is irrelevant to the conversation. However, like right behind me, you can't really see it, but right behind me are a couple of guitars and a different computer where I record music. Now, I've had my guitars in my bedroom where I can play a lot. I have my guitars on the other side of the desk and I would never record music. And so the other day, I quite literally put these guitars like right around my chair where I sit down. And now the last 3 days I've recorded music because it's right freaking there. Like accessibility should not be overlooked by any means. I totally agree with that for sure.
But it's more money, it's more time, it's more effort. We got to get them out there. We got to own 900 power bands. We got to, and then like I say, we got to get the guys in the habit of saying, oh crap, I need to stop what I'm doing and waste the time of walking over to get the right tool, right? Instead of doing this one little thing that I've done 1,000 times before.
Because that one little thing could be the thing, could be the time, it could be the moment.
Yep.
Yeah, I really think we had a very similar issue back in 2021 where we had saw an injury trend over 3 or 4 years of those type of portaband injuries, specifically with that 5-inch tool. We always kind of ask those 3 simple things with a tool. Is it the right tool for the job, right where you're at? Is the tool safe, in good working condition, and it's the right tool? And the employees trained on it. So we really looked at those 3 aspects of it, and we found the same thing Rebecca did earlier, is that we found many instances where that wasn't the correct tool for the job. So updating our best practices per task to make sure that maybe there's an all thread cutter that is used to cut that, or other available tools that are out there, and then that we have those available. And then we looked at the portaband itself and really dove into how those injuries were taking place and what effect the tool itself had on that. And we found some major issues with that. One of the most common things that you'd see employees do as those instances there is we're removing that second hand. The second hand is what gives the strength to that tool. The tool is very heavy. The trigger hand is on the end of the tool. So when you're only holding that, you have very little control over that tool. And most people are taking that hand off to grab the off-fall piece is typically what they're doing. When that tool does come down and you're struggling with the weight of that tool, your trigger finger is sort of the pendulum of where that weight is setting. And it's very difficult to stop the tool. So we would even see leg injuries and thigh injuries from tools coming through and hitting employees. So the first thing we looked at is how do we keep their hand on there? You know, how do we keep that second hand in place so that we're not seeing those types of tools? And I know as far as Milwaukee goes, we've worked with them in developing a dual trigger portaband. So there's a secondary safety trigger on the off hand. So it is physically impossible to remove the second hand. So you're going to maintain control of that tool throughout the cut. So we know we're not going to see that. So when we did that, we switched out hundreds of portabands, put a safer tool in place.
Well, so now let's talk about this a little bit, because this is what really was surprising to me when we talked about this offline. So you have both partnered with manufacturers to rework tools and designs, like quite literally influence based on the ground feedback. I want to know a little bit more examples of how that's been done, because I don't know if everyone on the call realizes, I guess, like how much voice they potentially could have. And yes, like for sure, like the relationship we have with the vendor and the size of the contracts might have an influence. However, from what I gather, they're looking to obviously improve and ensure that the tools are the most effective for everyone, right? They're looking to avoid these situations, these issues. Tell me a little bit about like that vendor kind of relationship that you've had, Rebecca.
Yeah, if I can give a shout out to Milwaukee, they legitimately want to learn from the end user, and they had a big culture shift in their own company 10 years ago, where they went out and they're spending a ton of money on research and development. They want to come out, they want to help us, they want to learn from us, they want to educate us, they want to support us. And so it's really awesome. I'm so upset with this portaband thing, and I'm calling Milwaukee and saying, how do I fix it? What do I do? How do I change it? And they started by giving me this or giving me that or looking at this, but I just had them come in, and they did, like Ricky was mentioning, we have an all thread cutter we could have used instead. We had a copper cutter that we could have used instead. They just had a 1-inch copper cutter. They've now created a 2-inch copper cutter, right? So they are constantly looking for feedback, and they're constantly giving us their time, their effort, their energy. We've helped develop a couple tools. I know Murphy Company has helped develop a couple tools. I mean, they're really, really great. And the more kind of the squeakier wheel, and the more we're telling them what we want and what they need, you don't get it immediately, but we're getting a lot of changes, and that dual handle trigger, both grinder and portaband is a fantastic tool. Your guys will hate it for a while, right? But you legitimately you can't duct tape it down. It's for sure a safer tool. They created a safer tool with the support of their end users. And I'll tell you, I don't know, Ricky, if you're seeing it, but some of our GCs are starting to require dual handle trigger only on the job site.
Absolutely.
So this is coming across the nation, and it's going to be the standard pretty soon. So look out for that for sure.
On Rebecca's front, I just spent 3 days last week, Monday through Wednesday, at Milwaukee's headquarters in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it's amazing to me. They brought in safety leaders from around the country. I think it's the 6th year, something like that I've been there for this event. And it is 3 days with, again, safety leaders from around the country, and they're only looking at tool innovation, tool design. How do they make their tool safer? And going tool by tool on what's the injury trends? How are these injuries occurring? What's the body position? What was the body injury? what caused this? Something like auto stop. The auto stop function is an anti-rotation function. So we saw more overhead drilling injuries when a tool would bind up and turn and cause that wrist or hand injury. So there's an auto stop function built into that now, where that tool is going to stop automatically if it starts that loose turn. We worked with them over the last couple of years on the overhead rotary hammer. They came out with that hammer initially with the dust extraction on it to meet the Table 1 compliance standard, which was phenomenal. It was a great tool to meet a need, but the tool had some issues. And we went back with them saying, we've had some rotational issues with the tool when it binds up. The weight of the tool was a bit of an issue with it. The way it was designed, understand the mechanics of what they had to put in it. And then the off handle. So the secondary handle was on the upper left of the tool, meant when you were doing overhead drilling, how that tool's used, your left shoulder was really hyperflexed up and kind of stayed in that position. So we went to them with some simple asks. What they came back with is a tool that incorporated fixes for all of those issues and multiple others. They put an anti-vibration feature into the tool. Again, if you're using that tool all day long, setting anchors,
Sure.
Drilling all day long with that tool, it builds up kind of more of a chronic issue. The dust extraction system is more precise. It's smaller. The tool is lighter. Again, the auto stop stops that auto rotation on it almost immediately. And that off handle, they've not only moved down to the bottom left of the tool, so it keeps your shoulders in a good ergonomic position and strong, but instead of the handle sticking out this way, they turn the handle in so that it's more of a grip, handshake function, which is the strongest grip that you have. So you have tremendous control of the tool now. Your body's in the correct position to use it. The tool's lighter. Everything about the tool. I think there were 6 or 7 major safety innovations they put into that one tool when they rolled out the new model of that. Just incredible. They would listen to that level of feedback.
Yeah. So reporting back on the response of the poll here. So the majority of folks say they've never even considered reaching out to a tool manufacturer about a safety concern. For those who did, by the way, no one said that it didn't lead to any change. So for those who actually did reach out, like it seems like they did respond and did help. So with that being understood, that like the majority of people have not even considered this, right? How do they do that? Do they literally just email whomever their point of contact is over the vendor? Is it better to come with more trend analysis information? Like how do they make sure they're heard and that their investment in reaching out to these people actually doesn't fall on deaf ears?
So I will tell you, I have a phenomenal rep. I've been in other places in the country where the reps just aren't as engaged for whatever reason. But yes, work with your purchasing department, work with the rep. Milwaukee, for example, other manufacturers as well, but Milwaukee has a whole safety team. So you can not only get your purchasing rep involved, but they have a safety rep that they work with, and they all want to learn and come in. So, and then it's great if you have analysis. It's great if you have trends, but I mean, I've literally called them up like, I don't know what to do. Help me with this, and they problem solve with me and work. So it's anything you want. If you've got a good rep, you'll get really good service from Milwaukee. And I know, Ricky, you did, what was it, Warner Ladders too? You've had some really good experience with. So try any manufacturer. I can just speak really highly about Milwaukee specifically.
Yeah, I would agree. Milwaukee's incredible. Their safety team, their support team across the nation. But again, my Warner rep was here like 15 minutes ago. It was here looking at a new product. And just 3 weeks ago, we were down in San Antonio with Warner for a small one-day safety summit there where they had every new product out. And again, same product that 2 years ago we talked about. A year ago, we said we need this, and it's deliverable today. Warner did even small things like putting tool attachments for tool tethers on the top of the ladder, the top of a step ladder. You have that quick connection point. Looking at how those are designed, how they're used, our podium ladders, platform ladders, gated ladders on those podiums, everything that you can ask for from the manufacturer to make our work safer. They are all ears. They want to make their products better. They want to protect the end user of those products.
Yeah.
So William, by the way, I know that you have a question in the chat, and we'll get to that in a little bit. And also wanted to give a level set for the rest of the folks here. We got a couple more topics we want to talk about. One is about fall specifically and fall protection systems, which we're going to talk about right now. And then at the end, we want to talk about mental health as well. I know that you both are pretty passionate about that, so I want to make sure we give enough space and time for that. Let's shift gears to the falls. Let me bring up one of my little fancy charts again here. You know, I spent all this time making these things. I got to show them. Come on. All right, listen, 40%, basically 40% of fatalities in the trades is caused by falls, slips, and trips. Huge percentage, right? So that's why we're talking about this right now and talk a little bit more. And when we were talking about what we should talk about for this discussion, we talked a little bit about fall protection systems, class 1 and class 2. This is above my head. Maybe it's not
Really?
above everyone's head, but I think that probably there's lack of understanding about this stuff. So this is where I want to dive into a little bit more with you all right now. So let us talk about this fall protection systems, class 1 and class 2. First, what's the difference? What is the difference here?
Well, class 1 and class 2 are very specific to SRL, so self-retracting lifelines. It's the new ANSI standard, and essentially, class 2 is sort of the industry standard where we're all going right now. The difference being that class 1 is really intended for overhead tie-off, and it's not rated for leading edge, so it's a very traditional system. A class 2 SRL, self-retracting lifeline, can be mounted at foot level or above, so we can mount it at lower anchorage points. And it's a leading edge device, meaning that it will survive a leading edge if you were to fall or you have some type of hazard there. So think of when you're in an aerial lift. If you're in an aerial lift, your tie-off point is going to be the factory tie-off point, which is going to be slightly below your waist. A class 2 device can tie off at that level, safely to do that. It's tested and meant to do that. If you were to fall out of the lift, most likely the only way that you could do it was over the railing, meaning that that device is going to need to survive that leading edge of that railing when it goes over it. So a class 2 device is a lot more versatile in both where I can use it and how I can use it.
Yeah.
So adoption of class, it seems like that's a safer thing. So is it safe to assume then that it's being widely adopted, or is there pushback? And if so, why?
Well, so, I mean, this is an ANSI standard as opposed to an OSHA law.
Okay.
So companies do not have to conform. Likewise, they can slowly conform. So instead of just throwing everything away that I have right now and buying all new stuff, I can kind of slowly conform. Then as I'm conforming, I have to make a choice about, do I want to buy class 1 and class 2, or do I want to simply go class 2 across the board? Upsides and downsides to everything, right? If you go class 2 across the board, then your end user doesn't have to make any decisions. And that's huge, right? I don't have to do as much maybe training. I don't have to verify that they're always making the right choice. That's a huge, huge, huge benefit. And I think that most of my peers that I talk to, that's the way we're going. We're just going class 2 100%. Now, if you were to choose to do both class 1 and class 2, class 1 is cheaper and it's lighter. So if you're only doing overhead work, it would be less weight on the body if you were only using class 1. So that might be nice, right? So each company really has to make the decision. Do they want to make a full turnover tomorrow, throw everything away that they have, buy all new stuff? And then or do they want to go kind of slowly? And then number 2, do they want to go class 1 and class 2? And again, the biggest issue with that one is there's got to be a ton of training, and you've got to make sure the end user really understands it. If you go class 2, it's like, hey, that's your SRL, go get it and use it. Use it anyway.
I love that idea. Like in that state where you're only using class 2 or one singular thing, you're removing the decision making from the process, right? Like, and so from a marketing standpoint, we try to do that all the time. We give you one call to action, for example, versus 2, because we don't want you to choose. Like, we know what we want you to do, and so you just do it. Like, just this is the way. But obviously not realistic in every single circumstance. But I love the way that you framed that. I thought that was great. Rick, anything to add there?
Yeah, I've always looked at fall protection. I've been in this industry for 30 years now. I know I don't look that old, but I probably do look that old. But in 30 years of doing this, we always kind of say, I feel like I spent the first 15 or 20 years getting people to wear fall protection, and the last 10 or 15 getting them to wear it and use it correctly. Because it's not as easy as it sounds. Every piece of fall protection is unique. Everywhere you're tying off, anchoring what you're working around is unique as well. For somebody to be trained well enough to truly understand all the applications of the fall protection they have and where it's applicable is very, very difficult. So the more we can simplify that and say that this piece of equipment is more versatile, there's less likely that you're going to use this incorrectly, is a win for everyone.
Yeah, makes sense.
They got to make way too many decisions every minute of their life anyways,
Right.
So I agree.
Let's bring in William's question here. So let's see what we got here. With regard to training, do you believe that craft training doesn't incorporate safety training enough? One thing that I've noticed is that tradespersons have seemed to lost pride in their craft, and this constantly shows in unsafe work practices. Any responses to that?
I would say from a training perspective, the biggest issue that I think most companies have in training is we train with a fire hose. We bring new employees in, and whatever level of orientation you're doing, that's 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, they're getting an incredible amount of information, both overall safety information and your company information as sort of one hit. And then they're on the tools, after that. To really make training effective, it's how do we follow that training up? How good is our overall culture of our organization? And do we continue that training on a regular basis to assure that those messages get through? Because you're not remembering everything you learned in an orientation class.
Sure.
So how do we support that as we move forward is really vital.
Yeah, especially if you're young and inexperienced, inexperienced, you don't even know what questions to ask or what words they're using, right? It's not helpful at the very beginning. But William, you bring up another thing. I've never really looked at the correlation between kind of the loss of craftsmanship and the safety aspect with that one. But the loss of craftsmanship is something I've been fighting my entire career, trying to find ways to ensure that we have more people coming in, the right people coming in, the right attitude. My old guys are my favorite guys. They have the experience that's amazing. But the way the industry is going, not only the way generations are going or people are going or whatever, the way the industry is going where everything now is prefab. And so it really is almost like Legos out in the field. And we are losing, I think, that ability to make those decisions about what to do when the prefab doesn't come out correctly. And that's been a concern of mine all along. That's
so
a really interesting point, though. I really want to look into how that relates to safety. I've never thought about that. Thank you.
Oh, for sure. I can relate to that, like with the use of AI and how easy it is to write things. And like, is that like, thank God I didn't grow up in the world of that, where like I've literally for the first 25 years of my professional life, I've had to, think, right? Like, so I can think without the thing, right? Wow. That is, great question, William.
Yeah, I'd say an added thing to that, especially on the younger workers, people learn a little bit differently than they did before. Kind of our YouTube generation, if you will,
attention span.
How we train. So we have really focused the last 2 or 3 years on micro learnings. Yeah. So as I said, learning everything on orientation day one is very, very difficult. But as we move forward and we do micro learnings, whether that be a daily or a weekly basis, where we're sending out short burst trainings that, hey, here's 90 seconds on inspecting a ladder.
Very TikTok-y, like basically.
Yeah, very TikTok for safety, if you will. We're currently using a company called Typhoon to do a lot of that training. There are hundreds of employees that are active in that, getting daily training sent to them, even ones that we create in-house, with the primary focus of every training being under 2 minutes and how we deliver that. So we have very focused, detailed trainings that go out on just hundreds of different topics.
And we've really tried to make our tailgates much more meaningful. And so I write a majority of the tailgates that go out, they go out across company wide, and they're very specific to the injuries we've had. And we hit, fire fire extinguishers once a year. We hit heat illness once a year, right? It's kind of built into our system. So we actually send out 2 mandatory tailgates every month. One is a very safety functioned, very traditional safety. You know, we had a portaband injury. It's going to be on portabands, or it's going to be on inspecting tools or something like that. Written for me, written from me, written for my guys. You know, so I hope it really appeals to them. We've started doing videos of tailgates and sending them out. You know, so again, trying to do things that make tailgates more meaningful. They get that training, you know, once a week, whether they want it or not, right? The other thing we've done, and maybe this will lead us into our last topic as well, is one of our mandatory tailgates is always on mental health. So once a month, again, I'm writing them, we're sending them out to our guys. Again, a great time to use a video because it's kind of me speaking from my heart sometimes, things like that. But we've done one mandatory mental health tailgate at least per month for the last 2 or 3 years. And with May being Mental Health Awareness Month, it's a really good time for us to focus on some of the more traditional, sometimes mental health too. So
Yeah. Let's talk about that. So I mean, I won't put up the stats on the screen because I mean, I wish we didn't have to have this conversation for the totality of all the things we covered, but particularly here for this topic. So some of the stats, just so to lay some context: 5 times as many construction workers lose their lives to suicide compared to the general population. 6,000 construction workers died by suicide in 2022. This is all, you know, highest among professions, among the industries. Like it is prevalent. It is pervasive. It is a problem. I also realize, and this is not just in the trades industry at all, but for sure anywhere, that talking about mental health is uncomfortable for many different reasons. There's a lot of different host of reasons. So with that understanding that regardless of the trade, regardless of the industry, right? That this conversation, talking about mental health, either seen in somebody else or within oneself, is a very uncomfortable thing. Okay, great. How does this get brought in? And Rebecca talked a little bit about what she does, and I'd love to know a little bit more like the responses to these tailgates. But like, how do you bring this into the culture of your organizations in a way that feels right to everyone else, right? It doesn't feel like it's forced to them. It doesn't feel like it's just another thing they have to check off and say like, oh yeah, I've done this. I've watched this video essentially.
I can tell you it's a lot easier today than it was several years ago. I first came in contact with this subject in 2019. I saw a paper that Cal Bear wrote that had BLS statistics on there, and at the time, a little over 5,000 fatalities by suicide. And, you know, and I just hope that number sinks in. We just talked about safety for the last 45 minutes. And you mentioned that we have about 1,000 fatalities a year in the construction industry. You mentioned fall protection, around 350 fall protection fatalities a year. We spend, and going back to 2019, looking at some of these numbers, we spend billions of dollars with a B, billions of dollars on fall protection a year, from design, equipment, purchase, training, enforcement. What we do for fall protection, we're losing 350 workers, and money well spent. We shouldn't lose any. But we're losing 5,000 to 6,000 workers to suicide, another 15,000 workers to overdoses. And how much money were we spending on any type of total worker health programs, mental health programs, suicide prevention programs? The answer was none. It was shocking back then. As we looked for information in 2019, we struggled on how do we do this. You know, you mentioned the difficult conversation part. The first day we brought this conversation up with my company, it was like, hey, here's what we're going to do. Somebody said, what, you're going to go talk to a bunch of construction workers about their feelings? And I was like, yeah, you know, that's what we're going to do. We'll see how it goes. And it was unbelievable, the response that we got from our own teams, from our job sites, that this was a conversation that people were begging to have, that wasn't there. And we built off of that over the last 6 years, 7 years. The AGC, we started with the AGC here in Missouri, built out a national task force to address mental health. You go to the AGC website and go to their mental health page. There are hundreds of resources on there, from toolbox talks to trainings for supervisors, for workers, videos, free supplies, posters, hope chips, unbelievable. And then The Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention, the CISP, has done phenomenal work around the country. Some of the best people you will ever run into, and they're there to help anybody in this country in the construction trades. And that's just two of the bigger, but there are so many resources out there, from written programs, how to get started, evaluations of your MAP programs for your unions, or EAP programs, member assist programs, or employee assist programs, what those consist of, what are available there, employees understanding the resources that are available to them. We could spend a couple hours on this topic, or a couple days probably, and not get to all of it. But there's so much out there that we can do for our employees, and there are still far too many that haven't got this message.
I have a very similar experience with Ricky. Every time I go out to a job site, every time I do like job site wide, the GC asks me to come out and talk or whatever. Every single time I've done one of these conversations about like horrible things like suicide and drug abuse, not even just the like, hey, let's all be nice type of conversations. I mean, without fail, 2, 3, 4, 5 people walk up to me afterwards and say, thank you for saying that. Thank you for doing this. And I had a friend who, and I knew someone who, and that's actually a really interesting exercise that we've done in a lot of different settings. But if you have a bunch of safety guys sitting around or a bunch of construction guys sitting around and you say, how many people know someone who's died of mesothelioma or silica, right? And one person knows someone, right? And you say, how many people do you know who've died of slips, trips, and falls, right? And 3 people know someone who's died. And you ask someone, how many people know someone who's died of suicide? And almost every hand goes up. And so you recognize that you know, this is a really big deal. It's a really big deal, you know, nationwide, construction specific. But it's you know, we even talk about the mental health of your children and your families, right? Because you can't come to work and do a good job when you know your child is at home suffering.
Wow.
So it's really something, we look at this really as a holistic approach. We want to talk about mental health. We want to talk about your mental health. We want to talk about your family's mental health, right? And we really want, this has been kind of our mantra for several years. We want work to be the place you can come and work. You know, you got into this profession for a reason. You love working with your hands. You love being outdoors. You love watching the buildings get built. You know, whatever the case is, you chose this profession and you're good at it. So we want you to come to work. We want you to be able to put kind of your stressors aside. You know, there's plenty of stuff going on at home. There's plenty of stuff you got to deal with. But if you can come to work and do the job that you love to do in a safe environment where you know you're cared about and you're making a contribution, that's the very least that we can do for you. And then if we can expand that and know that you have resources for the other things that are going on in your life or whatever, that's our ultimate goal.
Is there any like differentiation of how to have these conversations with the folks? Like, do you offer opportunities for people to have one-on-one settings to talk about things rather than just always in group settings, because that might be intimidating to them? Or like, how does that work to ensure that someone feels comfortable enough to talk about something if they feel, you know, intimidated?
Training is just such a huge part of this. And there are so many training programs out there, whether that's QPR training, which is phenomenal, mental health first aid. There are so many programs out there that actually can help teach you how to have those conversations, how to engage in those conversations, the right things to say, maybe things you want to steer away from saying. How we handle these and how we discuss those are really, really important. And then some people may never have the conversation, but we want to make sure that the training is there for them, the resources, the more that they understand that they're not alone. They're not the only person that's dealt with this. When we share those conversations, when we share stories, when we do these trainings, whether that be a weekly, a monthly toolbox talk, or stand down during mental health month or suicide prevention month, people get that message. And then making sure that they know what those resources are. If you need something, here's somebody here you can come to. Here's somebody on the job site you can talk to. If you're not comfortable with that, Here's what 988 does. Here's your member assist program through your union hall or through your EAP program through contractor. Here's a number you can call. Here's what it does. Here's how many sessions of this that somebody may have. We've gone as far as putting the mental health information boards inside of Johnny on the spots in places where people are private, where maybe they're more apt to scan that QR
accessibility again, right?
Or write down that number than they are having that conversation out loud. If they want to have it, we are glad to have somebody there to help them. But
I love it. I love that.
After 6 years, the success stories that we have that we could share are just unbelievable.
I just want to call out, you talked about letting them know they're not alone, not just like as a personal note. So I teach that to my kid, like even when he's like feeling sick or sad, he's like, you're not, it's the first thing I say to him is you're not alone. And I say it so often that actually the other day he moved my cat from his legs and the cat like meowed a little bit. And he's like, it's okay, Locke, you're not alone. And it like broke my heart. Like it were like just saying that helps just for everyone. Like
this
honestly,
is normal. This is your feelings are normal. Yeah.
Yeah. It helps. It helps.
And we trained my safety team is the HR team for the field. I came from an HR background as well, so I have that experience and knowledge. And so that's something that I think is really cool about my company. But I did specifically put my entire safety team through mental health first aid. And we all got certificates, but what it really did is give everyone the comfortability. And thank God I have like the most amazing team ever anyways, and they already are comfortable talking about it, and they already are good at putting their arms around people was the term we use or whatever, right? But we, like you say, we are their resource, and we go out there, we see them every day, we talk to them, we check in with them. The foremen who don't want to handle it, they know they can call us, right? And it's just, we just talk about it all the time. We're there. We're doing a sticker for Mental Health Month, and my safety team is going to go to every single job site and do a stand down on mental health and then give out that sticker. We're all going to, hopefully people will choose to take the pledge and put that sticker on their hard hat. We're a team, and we have the respect for each other and for their own mental health. So it's something we just keep talking about.
Listen, I want to respect people's time. We're at 47, so I think we're gonna let them go. But I do want to note a couple of things before you all take off and leave. Number one is that this is recorded. I will send out an email tomorrow. Look for it. It'll have a recap of all this stuff as well as the full recording that you can share with whomever you want to, what have you. If you have any questions or follow up, I know that only a couple of you did during the call today. Just reply to that email. I read every single one of those emails, and I'll get to Ricky. I'll get to Rebecca. If you have specific questions that you want to ask, we will forward that over to them so you can get more thoughtful responses. So please don't hesitate to do that. And if you also have any ideas for future topics that you think are relevant for you all on the job, please let me know in that email, because I love doing I don't love doing topics like this, but I do love doing things where I put together smart people that I can ask dumb questions about and they can answer and let everyone else feel like they're walking away with something valuable. We got a quick little question. Hold on. Thank you. This was great. Yeah, no, thank you, Liz. Appreciate it, Elizabeth. All right, y'all. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you so much, Ricky, for your time. I'll let you know if I get any follow-up questions from folks. But other than that, I appreciate everyone coming in attendance. Enjoy the rest of your month of April and the rest of spring, and busy season for some of you folks coming up real soon. So take care, all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.